Hey, it's Ken Gagnon with YouTube channel Gamebits here to play Master Spy from TurboGun. This is a cinematic stealth platformer for Mac, PC, and Linux via Steam and Humble Bundle, released on September 8th for $9.99 and provided to me by the developer for the purpose of this week's IndieSider. So let's see. I have been playing for a while. I'm going to start a new game so you can see what it's all about. Actually, no, I'm just going to go to the level select and choose the first level. That should do it, I think. Rear entry. There we go. Apparently I have some times here I could stand to improve on. So there are some cinematic cutscenes that I just skipped, but this is the gist of the gameplay. You are the Master Spy, and you have two buttons at your command. You can jump, and I'm apparently having some trouble jumping. There we go. Jump. And there's a slight double jump there, and then you can use the cloaking. There we go. Cloaked. And when I'm cloaked, I move slowly, I jump not as far, but the guard can't see me. And that's good, because I don't want to get captured. And the point of the game is to get all those key cards. Is he really going to ask me this every time? And get to the next room. So, there. Get that key card, and that lets me open the door down there. I just need to get there without being caught. And jump! And there. So you can jump when you are cloaked, it's just not ideal. Now this is a little bit tougher because there are 4 guards. Mind the ones having coffee in there. And there's a key card behind one of these guards. So I need to be very stealthy and move very quickly before this walking guard gets back. There we go. And, oh! Failed to jump. Let's try that again. So this game was first announced in late 2013 and finally came out in September of 2015. I'll be speaking with the developer of the game and the artist about how they collaborated to make this game despite being separated by a 12-hour difference in time zones. Also, what their inspirations were, because this game reminds me very much of... oh man. Some classic 8-bit Nintendo games like Golgo 13 and Ninja Gaiden, especially as far as the cutscenes go. And also, whoop, there we go. Why am I having trouble jumping? I'm having some trouble with my PlayStation 4 controller, apparently, that I have plugged in here. It doesn't seem to jump when I want it to jump. Like, there, that worked. I go again, there we go. Impossible Mission, originally for the Apple II and Commodore 64, and I played it on the 8-bit Nintendo. Now here we have security cameras, so there are more and more things getting in the way of me getting through each of these areas. Why am I... Oop. And it does keep track of how many times you got caught. Sometimes I mix up my jump and my stealth button, and the game won't let you remap the buttons. I kind of feel sad about that. That is a common feature of remapping buttons in games that have accessibility in mind. Now down there we have a dog. The dog, whoops, tries to get me like that. And he will come and get me whether or not I'm cloaked. So don't even bother cloaking. Better to save your ability to jump. And then try to get past these guys. Like that. Let's do a few more levels. Definitely getting more complicated here. Now the door is all the way up here, so I have to go get that key card down there and make my way back up. All while staying cloaked, because even though it doesn't matter to the guards, I mean the dogs, it doesn't matter to the dogs, but the guards certainly do care if I'm cloaked or not. Let's try this. Nope. It's hard to jump far enough when you're cloaked. There we go. Just have to think about it a little bit less. Alright, so I've been doing enough levels. Let's bring on Kris and John to talk about the development of this game. If you would like to hear the audio version only of this game, you can also subscribe to the iTunes podcast at IndieSider.net/iTunes, where you can also leave a review. Feel free to tweet me at Gamebits with your suggestions of what games you would like to see on future episodes of IndieSider, and please leave a thumbs up or a comment on this video too. Joining me today to discuss Master Spy from TurboGun is Kris Truitt. Hi, Kris.
Hi, I'm Kris. I'm the developer of Master Spy with TurboGun.
Awesome, thanks, Kris. And also on the line today is John Coxworth. Hi, John.
Hi, I'm John, and I'm the artist for Master Spy.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us, both of you. Now, this was quite the feat to arrange because, as I understand it, the two of you are separated by 12 hours of time zones. How does that work? How do two people work together when one's asleep and the other's awake?
We just sleep at really weird hours for the most part, I think. Yeah, because John, well, I don't know if John wants to say about this, but yeah, so John lived in Thailand for a while, which is a 12-hour, like a perfect 12-hour difference between his time and my time, which was cool because like anytime I looked at the clock, I was like, okay, I know what time it is there, so I know what he's kind of doing. And now John lives in, where do you live in Japan?
In Kawasaki, Japan. What I think makes it kind of easy is that, you know, we have a day job, so it's basically we have the same free time, you know, the early morning and late at night. You know, that's when we got to do our work on the game. So, like early morning and late at night, or it's just, you know, the same if you flip it 12 hours anyway.
So is it a lot of asynchronous development where one of you goes to bed and leaves notes for the other person and the other person is working on it and then you just keep passing back and forth, or are you actually doing like live video chats where you're programming at the same time?
Yeah, we do a combination of live video chat, just Google Chat. Like when we were writing the story, John did a lot of the awesome storyboards. We kind of co-wrote a lot of the story just using Google Docs and editing things at the same time, giving each other ideas and bouncing off of that. But we would do a lot of the, you know, you wake up and, oh wow, there's some really cool backgrounds in the Dropbox folder, or he'd wake up and I'd be like, hey, check out these levels I did last night, sort of thing. So there's a lot of that went on as well.
I think we both have a pretty good vision of what we want for the game, so that's what made it the easiest. That was the easiest thing, you know, that made it the easiest to work with, you know.
Yeah.
Now, Master Spy is such a polished game that even though I don't see any other games to TurboGun's credit specifically, I assume that each of you have other games in your portfolio? What else have you worked on?
Whoa.
This is our first real game.
Yeah.
I think both of us. I've just done programming for the web pretty much, and you know I was always interested in games, and we did make a small.
It's not really a game.
Yeah, it's not really a game. It's a small Logan's Run tribute where you're one of the participants in the carousel. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so it's on our TurboGun site, and it's just a small thing, and we made it in like a few days. And then John, I don't know if you want to talk about your art background.
Well, I went to school in Chicago for animation, and I don't know, it was kind of crazy going to college, but I couldn't really make any money, and I did advertising first, so I had to learn how to program, like, you know, on the job, really. And I'm not really a good programmer at all or anything, but I can sort of get my way around. And I did some flash banners. But really what I like to do is, like, you know, comic books and pixel art and that sort of thing. So, you know, I eventually just quit that, and then I just became a teacher. And that allows me enough time to work on what I want to work on, you know, at night and in the morning and everything.
Wow, so this is your first game. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, at the time of this recording, it's been out for a whole 24 hours. How has the reception been? As I understand it, just before this call, you were watching somebody do a speed run on Twitch?
Yeah. Reception's been pretty good for the people that have picked it up so far, and that's been really awesome. It's been great seeing people play it, and it's funny seeing, like, on Twitch chat, people kind of already starting to create theories about the Master Spy characters, whether they're you know funny or not.
Yeah,
those are really
pretty ambiguous, you know, kind of on purpose. So I like that people are coming up with their own ideas and
their own kind of lore for him is really cool.
Remind me, what genre do you describe this game? Because it has a lot of elements to it. As I was talking to Kris via email, at first I thought it was just an action game, and so I got really stymied by the puzzles because I didn't realize, I need to really switch my mindset and look at this as a puzzle action platformer with stealth elements. There's a lot going on here, so how do you describe Master Spy?
I kind of describe it as like a cinematic stealth platformer, and it is a precision platformer. The stealth elements are really integrated into the platforming. I want to say one of the kind of key inspirations for some of the design comes from the Oddworld games from the PlayStation 1, which those have heavier puzzle elements to it, but at its core, there's a lot of stealth, there's a lot of precision. It's not as freeform. But then Super Meat Boy and Dust Force and Hotline Miami, the way those games play quick, and it's all about finding patterns. I think those had some influence as well.
I'm not sure if I'm showing my age, but you didn't mention any of the influences that I saw in this game, which were old 8-bit NES games like Ninja Gaiden, Golgo 13, and Impossible Mission. Are those games that you were inspired or influenced by?
But we never played Impossible Mission, but someone commented on it, and I looked it up, and it looked. I was like, oh, I totally see the resemblance, and it looks like a pretty cool game too. I think Kris said he played it last few days or something. Did you play it, Kris? Or?
So I'd never heard of Impossible Mission until after we were well into the development, and yeah, so I had to check it out. And it's really cool. It's kind of tough. I would say, yeah, I grew up with Sega Genesis and with a Game Boy Advance. So a lot of those games, you know, I don't know. You know how your mind can just pick things up, and the cool things just stick in your mind, all washed together. So I'm certain there's a lot of stuff that comes from that era as well. There's actually, it may be a really weird game. There's this game called Solomon's Club.
Oh yeah, the sequel to Solomon's Key.
Yeah, so it's for Game Boy, and I had that, and I think part of that is like part of that might be in there with, in a certain way, kind of the quick levels. VR missions, the Metal Gear Solid VR missions, I played a ton when I was young. So kind of the the different approach, I liked the approach of each level. You're trying to do one thing, you're trying to learn one thing. I kind of tried to take that approach with at least introducing each mechanic in Master Spy and exploring each mechanic as much as possible.
What kind of game engine did you use for this title? Because it seems like a lot of indie games that I'm exploring are made in Unity, and then some other games are made in Unreal. I don't know how well either of those would fit for the unique kind of game that you've made here. So what engine did you use? Did you make your own?
It's using an older version of an engine called Melon.js, which is a JavaScript engine. So it's actually, the game is written in JavaScript, drawn to a canvas, and we use WebGL for like the screen curve for the final render effect. But yeah, it's all written in JavaScript.
Does the choice of JavaScript limit your potential to port the game to consoles or handhelds?
I'm not entirely sure yet. I've not investigated those too thoroughly. I think it might, but it's something I need to investigate more.
Let's talk a little bit about the gameplay. I noticed that the game tries to teach the player through example. There isn't really an instruction manual that shows you all the items and threats like you might encounter in the opening of Legend of Zelda, and there's not a training or tutorial stage. Instead, the players encounter the obstacles organically and have to sort of figure out how to get through that. And Kris, you saw some of the trouble I had with the motion sensors because I wasn't really paying attention to context clues. What sort of challenges did you experience in designing a game that teaches the players how to play it?
So I tried to approach each new obstacle as like, okay, the player needs to learn how to interact with this obstacle. So what I generally do is isolate it before I mix it in with anything else. Isolate it, and that way the player could experiment with it. But also I tried to design the levels in a way that would teach them, oh, you can interact with it this way, you can't this way. An example of that would be the pressure plates. And like there's an area where you can drop off onto pressure plates, and normally you would think, okay, I can drop down there. You drop down there, you land on them, and it sets off the pressure plate. there's pressure plates in a safe area above that where you can experiment with them, learn how they work. So I tried to take that approach with anytime we introduce something new. And the motion sensors, I think it's probably the hardest thing to convey because it is a little bit different. And that's why you only see those in Mission 2 as well. And that's one thing that we also tried to shoot for, is each mission had its own fill, had its own set of unique enemies and obstacles. So like Mission 2 was kind of an extension of Mission 1. For the Mission 3, you get things that react to you. You got tigers, the barriers, the doors that you can open, the trap doors that you can fall through, the assassins.
Yes.
And then you go to Mission 4, and everything is kind of cold and unfeeling. Nothing reacts to you on that one. It's all about you having to react to that, because that's got the robots, the crushers, flames, things like that. So it's, kind of the fully automated approach.
And what was the feedback from playtesters on that? Did they find this approach too easy, too hard, just right?
So I think that most of the playtesters got it. One of the things that I did, anytime that I made a new level or something like that, actually, I would just go to the guys that I work with at my day job, just be like, hey, I've got a new level. They'd load it up, I'd watch them play it, and that gave some incredible feedback, I'd say, like just immediately seeing how they would react to things. So that gave me some insight on, okay, this works, this doesn't work, and I could go from there. And so far from testers, I think that most of the things seemed like they were pretty intuitive, with the exception of the motion sensor. And looking back, the flip jump mechanic that's in there, I don't have a really good teaching method for that. I think I kind of just expected, oh, that's part of the controls. They would learn that, even though I did with the cloak. You can go through the first 2 levels uncloaked, but the 3rd level you absolutely have to cloak before you can go through it. If I could go back, I think I might make something learned for that, but that was the approach I took there.
Now, John, you mentioned earlier that you had to learn some programming, having gone to college for design. What was your role in creating this game? Because my uninformed perspective is that the artist creates the art and gives it to the programmer to insert, but it sounds like you had more of a hands-on role?
I didn't really touch any of the programming of Master Spy, but I guess just working, making some, banners and Flash that were pretty interactive. Like, we had one client that, I think, it was a Mercedes, and they wanted rollover actions, and like they wanted the car to react to how the person was, clicking on stuff. I don't know. So it gave me some perspective on like what's possible with programming and what isn't. So like I don't know. It probably happens a lot where an artist just has like so many ideas, but a lot of them aren't very realistic. So I guess it just made a lot of my ideas more realistic for Kris, and like know what we can push and what we can't.
Gotcha. I'm interested in the points where the graphics and the gameplay overlap, specifically in the decision to present only one screen at a time. When Master Spy gets to the edge of the screen, it doesn't scroll organically so that you see like another inch and another inch as he moves. It goes one whole screen at a time. And that's very much in the style of old 80s computer games and arcade games. What was the decision to make that kind of transition from room to room as opposed to the scrolling approach that, say, Ninja Gaiden might have used?
Well, that was inspired a bit by like older games. Like Mega Man does that to a point. Like it has some scrolling as well, but there's also a little bit of what's called the flip screen in there. Oddworld and then Solomon's Club, like I mentioned, is a single screen. I kind of like the idea of each section of the level being a part that you have to attack. So in a way, I wanted to put each part in focus. And that way you always knew what you were looking at, and you always knew what you were going for on an individual screen. And then I tried to be really careful on any time you entered a new screen, there was no gotchas, like you don't get caught when you move from one screen to the next if you aren't caught. The only exception there is if you backtrack in a few levels. and you're not cloaked. But those are. But anytime you're entering in a new screen that you've never been into before, there shouldn't be any way to get automatically caught there as well.
I just want to add something. I think having the screen fixed can help the player kind of rest their eye on the enemies and the platforms, whereas like if the screen is moving with the player all the time, I feel like it's just too like visually like fuzzy. Like you have to be super accurate and precise with this game, and if the screen is moving, I just feel like you won't be able to have that as precise of a feeling. Or maybe you could, but you'd have to make the artwork a lot simpler so that the platforms are easy to see while they're being scrolled and everything like that. Which I'd rather just have like really cool backgrounds and let the players focus on their obstacles.
Well, I certainly approach the method you chose because there is so much happening on a single level. There are hidden assassins, there are saw blades, there's lasers, there's tigers. If the screen was scrolling, I think that would just be too much to focus on, especially you would then have to deal with instances that Ninja Gaiden dealt with, which was respawning enemies and having to keep track of the position of objects and characters that are not on screen. And if you do that poorly, a hard game becomes nearly impossible.
Absolutely. And we actually, anytime you leave a screen, the positions of the enemies get reset as well. So like if you've lured tigers, things like that, or the assassins, those will get reset. So you know what to expect anytime you enter a new screen, because they're always going to start from the exact same position whenever you leave and enter that screen.
Another graphical feature of this game is the Crt Display option, which adds some scan lines and sort of curves the edges of the screen. I saw a comment in the Steam forum asking that this be optional, and you said that it is, but maybe I'm missing something. I don't see it at all. Do I need to unlock it?
No, I think I should have renamed this in the options, but it's the WebGL. It's not entirely clear, but turning WebGL or disabling WebGL there, we'll turn that off. I think I need to probably go back and change that, so that's more clear.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks for that clarification. So we talked about the gameplay and design, we talked about the graphics, but you had a third player, and that was Andre Alan Años creating the soundtrack. How did you get mixed up with him?
Andre and I actually go back quite a ways. We went to the same college and actually worked together and lived together for summer. I hope he's okay with that. But so I've known him for quite a while, and he's always been interested in video games. He did the NES versus Sega remixes with a couple of his friends. I don't know if you've heard those, but they're really cool. So that's how I know Andre. As far as direction, we had another musician who originally he was doing some really cool stuff, and it was a little bit more 80s vibe. It was really cool. He was just unable to continue on the project, unfortunately. But Andre and I had chatted a little bit before, and he expressed interest in doing a video game soundtrack. So I was like, "Hey, we've got this opening. Are you interested?" And he was on board for it.
When you had your other musician unfortunately have to drop out, did that mean that you scrapped everything they had done, or did Andre pick up where the other person left off?
So one of the things is, we just decided that, each musician really has their own style. So what we decided was, he's got his own style, and we were giving basically full ownership over the entire thing, over the entire soundtrack to him. That way, he didn't have to worry about, compromising style or anything like that, and just kind of let him do his own thing. And I think John and I, we both had a ton of ideas in mind. I think we probably,
I feel guilty. I was bombarding him with, too much direction, but I had some trouble understanding his process, because at first he was making the music kind of like, kind of like a musical outline, I guess you could say, but I didn't get it, so I was like, you need to make the music and more like this or something. But then in the end, it's just it all came together, and now I will believe him if he ever says, it'll come together in the end again. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's just part of the nerve of making your first game or something like that.
Yeah, especially when all 3 players are so dispersed across the globe. There's a lot more to coordinate in those cases.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, that's right.
So, amongst the graphics, the soundtrack, the gameplay, and the design, I'm curious, what feature or option did you work really hard to get just right to your own satisfaction that might be so subtle that players don't even notice?
I don't know if it's subtle, but John put in a ton of work on the background art in the game. Like, there's no tiles in the main levels. Like, in the entire 50 levels, he did those all in Photoshop. Like, drew it. And it's crazy. I saw him do it once. He was able to come visit me. I got to watch him do it live, and it was kind of like this weird magical process where he was just, like, I gave him the level outline, and he just drew the level on top of that. Which I think personally is insane, but I love the way that it turned out.
That's really cool. I'd like to see some sort of a live drawing session on YouTube or Twitch. It'd be fun to see the art being created.
Yeah, I always feel like I should do that sort of thing, but I don't know. I usually go to like a cafe to work because wherever I live, I never really have like a nice desk to work at, and when I actually draw well enough that it's exciting to watch, it's never when I happen to be streaming or something like that, or people are around or anything. But as for the original question on, for me, like, there's like an alternate storyline in the game that has a lot of work put into it too, but you really have to be pretty good to unlock that alternate storyline. So I think most people will miss it. But it's kind of like you said, I didn't play Ninja Gaiden growing up, but I actually started playing it like my last year of high school because my friend and I got an NES. Like I never had any NES or anything. But anyway, like I liked the first, few cutscenes of Ninja Gaiden, and but I was never really good enough to get through to all of them, and I just kind of forgot about it for a while, and then I found it on YouTube. I just said, I want to see what the rest of the game has. So I hope that like people kind of wonder that about Master Spy 2, and then maybe they can just like look up, what happens or something like that for like a sort of similar experience.
Yeah, I can imagine that alternate timeline might be hard to access because I'm playing on the easiest setting with save points and checkpoints, and it's still a challenging game. Fair, but challenging.
That's right. I agree. I'm not very good at games. I'm more of a game watcher than a player, but I like games that feel good. But I really like watching games and cutscenes and everything like that.
Yeah, I've never beat Super Meat Boy. I think I got stuck in like the third mission, or not mission, but third world. Maybe the second. I think it was the second world boss actually. I just got stuck on.
Yeah.
I loved what I played. I might come back to it someday with John on the alternate cutscenes because they really. I think they go a bit more in depth with. They obviously show more of Lily and Gel's backstory, and I think officially it's the canonical ending for the game.
Yes.
And so that it does change a couple of things.
How long was this game in development? Because I see news stories about it going to Steam Greenlight all the way back in December of 2013.
Yeah, we started back in. Well, I guess at the end of 2012, I kind of started experimenting with game stuff, and that was when John moved to Thailand. And I had just actually had my first kid, and that's the best time to start experimenting with game stuff, right? Is when you're both super busy. But I was like, yeah, I kind of like. It was always kind of something I wanted to do. I was like, all right, I just got to do it. And John and I kind of always talked about making games, doing projects together. So I started messing with that, and originally we were going to make a shmup. I think, that could be fun. Maybe we'll do one again at some point. So we kind of messed around with that for a little bit, and then I kind of had, I think I'd played like Hotline Miami. I was like, man, I want to make something that's like fast paced too, and like I want to make a platform. I knew that, and kind of got the idea for some kind of sci-fi game where you're phasing, you're doing something going invisible or something like that. Kind of just made a prototype, I guess, back in, I don't know, January, February of 2012? Was it 2013? Yeah, it would have been 2013.
Yeah, it's 2013. Like, we were doing the shmup for like the last few months of the year, and then you finally showed me the little white room with the little ski mask guy jumping around. Yeah. Like,
It was programmer art. Like, I can do some art, but I usually, when it comes to this game, I would try to intentionally make really bad art. That way, John would have to go back and do it. I was like, nah, you're way better at this than I am. So I'm gonna let you replace this sprite.
but Chris made Chris bouncy files. That's the programming art I think was good enough.
So we kind of worked on it on and off throughout the next year or two. Like we had some downtime where we just had other things we were working on, or I think I had a second kid while we were working on it, and so and we both worked full-time jobs besides making games. So it was kind of took a while to do, but we put a lot of hours into it.
And how would you say the game has changed in that time? Because looking at the trailer you posted, the teaser trailer in December of 2013, I see some very similar gameplay elements, even level designs. So what were you working on in the year and a half since then? Other than just adding more levels and more assets, of course.
Yeah, more levels, more art, the cutscenes, which there's like over 30 minutes of cutscenes, and that's like, if you were to hire, like, I know it's not like pure anime, but generally, I don't know how many man hours an episode of anime takes, but I don't know, I think I read it's like $200,000 usually to produce, like on the low end, to produce one episode of anime.
The other thing too, there's so many little details that like Chris has been working on the last year or two, that like I kind of felt like at the beginning of this year that everything Chris needed to do was all kind of done, and then it was all just kind of like up to me to just finish all the artwork. But there was still like a lot of little things that make like a finished and polished game that he had to sort out. It's so we were both working pretty hard all the way up until the end.
Oh yeah, because it's almost like Zeno's paradox. The closer you get to the end, the farther away, because there's always something more to do. The game is never done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's exactly how it felt. I'm so glad it's done, and it's the last few weeks before I was like, I couldn't imagine it ever being finished, but yeah, for me, this is like the first big artistic thing I've ever finished since college, so I'm kind of happy about that.
And what are you working on now? Is there more to add to the game, or are you already thinking about TurboGun's next game?
Yeah, we're kind of thinking pretty heavily on the next game. I think we've had an idea for like a year or so now on like TurboGun's next project. We have a document where we just like, anytime we come up with an idea, we write it down. And I think we came up with one where we both were like, yes, this is what we've got to do next. I love the world of Master Spy. I love Master Spy, and I wouldn't mind revisiting that someday in some form. But I think the next game's gonna be a little bit of a departure from that. I think in some ways it'll still very much be a TurboGun game.
Yeah, I don't know why, but close to the end of the game, I was like, man, once this game is done, I don't want to draw this guy's cloak. I don't want to draw his purple head ever again. But I don't know why. But now I feel like, if if people want a sequel, I don't mind, making up another, another batch of levels or something. Like, maybe I got the hang of it or something. But yeah, I think we got something different in store next.
Well, speaking of drawing his cloak, you also mentioned that there are a lot of fan theories about Master Spot. I'd appreciate if you could tell me if I'm hot or cold on mine. I think his cloaking device was invented by the Romulans. Am I right?
From Star Trek?
Yeah.
I think that's just gonna have to be something that remains a mystery.
I knew it. That denial says everything I needed to know. Thank you. Awesome. Well, I've been enjoying Master Spy. I love the storyline and the art and the gameplay. All right, we can find the game on masterspygame.com, and at the time of this recording, it's actually 10% off on Steam, and I will have links to all that in the show notes, as well as your individual Twitter accounts. So, Kris and John, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.